Good evening, everybody. Uh, all of you have been put through a very, very stressful day, and this is the penultimate session. So much of information, so much of learnings you have had, and so many insights. But I can assure you that you're going to find this particular session incredibly interesting because this is going to be a storytelling session where people are going to tell you the stories of their life. In 1991, when Bill Gates met up with Warren Buffett, he asked him, suggested one book, business book, which you think I should read. So Warren Buffett at that time suggested a book called Business Adventures. And that book was actually published in 1967. It is a book where the 12 business stories are told. Different businesses, different aspects of these businesses, but completely different. And Bill Gates swears by it. Since, of course, Bill Gates started propagating it, I believe in the last two years, the sales of that book went up more than the last 10 years after the book was published. But that's life, of course. And recently, I was reading a book by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, where he writes his story of how he built the business and the challenges he faced. It's a very gripping, it is like an adventure story, very gripping, and it's such a frank story that all the challenges, problems, doubts, self-doubts, everything comes through. So my role is going to be very limited here. I'm going to do the introductions and then allow the gentleman to speak. I have three people. Each of them are in different businesses and different stages of their businesses, different industries, and they have all had very exciting career stories to tell. They have extremely exciting stories. I had the privilege to talk to them before this, and each one of their stories, how it originated, how they built up, how they have reached this particular stage of their life is extremely fascinating, and I have no doubts you're going to find it very interesting. Combined with the fact, of course, because we must stick to the topic of the discussion, each of them have taken also private equity. So their stories of what was it, how was the challenge, the joy, the pleasure of private equity, and how did it add value, they will discuss that also. So without any further ado, gentlemen, I would request each one of you to first give the audience your story of how you started, how did you evolve the idea, and how you took it forward till date, and whatever else you think is important. Maybe we'll start with you, Doctor.
Thank you. I think it's a long story, very difficult to make it too short. Still, I will try to put in 400 seconds the journey. From Coimbatore, son of a landless farmer, found it extremely difficult to pay school fees to college fees. Then finally, I was a graduate. Coimbatore rejected me on the grounds that I am not even entitled to get a job, fortunately. And one company, finally I got a job. Fortunately, that also was closed. And I moved to Mumbai in Jayanti Janata Express and reached VT railway station and stayed 3 nights in VT railway station because I didn't have someone to receive me. Nor I had a credit card to check in any hotel, nor I had a purse to keep even a credit card. I'm talking about 1982, August 18, I landed in Mumbai. Fortunately, I got a great job at Baba Atomic Research Center, government job, gazetted officer post, Premium Research Institute, dream job. And as life has its own course of next step, I got married. The next step, got 2 children, and son was 7, daughter was 5. And at some point of time, I realized I need to do something because I keep asking in Hindi. My Hindi appears to be much stronger because I have chosen right kind of words. Jeene aaya ya jeetne aaya. So I thought government job means you will only survive. So I took a decision. And one more question I used to ask, बड़ा होना है या बुढ़ा होना है? So बुढ़ा तो अपने आप होते हैं, तो बड़ा होना है तो कुछ रिस्क लेना है. I took a decision to give up the job. And I have taken 5 decisions so far. Number 1 is leaving home without discussing with my father. Next is marrying without discussing with my mother. The third one is resigning without discussing with my wife. And the fourth one is to charge thyroid testing 1/4 of the cost than what industry was doing. And the fifth one is cancer diagnosis. We do a PET CT business, which is everybody charges 30,000. I charged 10,000. Maybe because I charged too little, I have become too rich. This is something I wanted business community to understand, that no company has collapsed down because they charged too little. It all collapsed because they could not control the costs and they have struggled. So at KL, I just started it. I knew I did a PhD in thyroid, so I focused only on thyroid. I didn't start Dr. Velumani Pathology Laboratory. I started Thyrocare. And fortunately, thyroid has proved to be almost as powerful as Android. Frugality made this business, focus made this business, frugality made this business, because I had only 2 lakh rupees in my hand as a provident fund amount. Just put in 2 lakhs, never borrowed a single rupee as debt for until today. If at all I have a banker, with that banker I have 100 crores. I don't have bankers' money with me. I wanted all entrepreneurs to understand it's not the money which makes the business, it is the focus, it's the stamina, it's an ability to truly challenge the challenges. Money is not that very vital one. So much so, I was peacefully working, investors came to me. They wanted my stock, I didn't want to give. When they want and I don't give, I have an ability to raise, because when you don't want to tell bluntly, I don't want to dilute. If the shares were worth 200 crores, tell 400 crores. They found it little high, they went away. They again came. Since they have come back again, I told 500 crores. This time they found I'm too greedy, they went away. Again they came, I told 600 crores. They told this time they have brought a stamp paper. So KL, I diluted 25%. Only when you have 20 acres of land in a highway, if you sell 2 acres, you will know what is the value of the remaining 18 acres, right? I didn't know any valuation. I didn't go for any fund advisor to ask what value tell. I didn't operate my own Excel sheet. Dimag mein jo aaya, chal gaya. Another 15 months, one more investor comes. Then I realized these guys are all after my money, after my stock. So 600, I wanted to tell 800. Then I had a doubt they may ask for it. Then I told 1,000. I thought I should tell 1,000. And I don't know what happened when they came. I had courage to tell 1,200. Within 10 minutes, they said, okay, we can close it. So my 10% more also had gone at 1,200 crore valuation. And then we were about to go for 1,800 crore in an IPO to give exit to the first investor. And then we went for a road show. All anchor investors had requested maximum possible at 2,400 valuation. Just within 3 months' time, the valuation 1,800 expected goes to 2,400. We go for an IPO. It gets subscribed 74 times. And the stock got listed at 3,300 crores. I didn't know my stock was worth 10 times more than what I thought. So this is the story of a man who had come with 500 rupees in his pocket. And we did have a good time with PE. Many people have bad time with PE. Whenever the company grows very well, love like anything. I think marriages also, if things are all going on right, they will tell I love you. Otherwise, they will only tell in the Facebook. I can continue with my experience with PE when my next round comes. Let my next colleague talk.
Anurag, you started your journey also early after your education. So if you can, how did you enter the business? How did you think about your business? If you could give a descriptive sense. And where are you at this point of time and your ideas and thoughts?
So I come from Bilaspur, which is in Chhattisgarh. My schooling was in Bilaspur. I come from a Marwadi family, so all I have seen around me is business. My father is also a businessman, so which is one of the reasons I never wanted to be in business. These days Marwadis put a lot of premium on education, so the typical Indian mindset, engineer ban jao ya doctor ban jao, doctor nahi banna hai to engineer ban jao. Engineering mein the best is IIT, so try for IIT, got into IIT Bombay. Came here, realized engineering was not meant for me. Almost half my batch was going to the US. I said, no, I don't want to be continuing engineering further because I want to go to the US. So I took up a job in software. I realized software was not for me. Then to get out of software, there were not too many options. So my mom was telling me, get into an MBA program, at least you'll have many more options. So without too much thought, I said, chalo MBA kar lete hain. So I got a little lucky, I got into IIM Ahmedabad. From there, I was fairly clear, I don't want to be in a business because I had seen a lot of struggle in my family, in immediate family, cousins, everywhere. I'd seen business all around and I'd seen all the ups and downs. So I said, I don't want to be in a business. I should be in a 9-to-5 job. I want to enjoy my life. And that's what I want to be doing in my life. So I took up a very cushy job with Tata Administrative Services. It's all I could have written in my dream job profile. In fact, there were only 2 companies that I applied. I got through both. And I said, TAS is like the dream career. So I got into TAS. After being a year in Tata's, I realized, the 9-to-5 thing was not gelling too well with me. So I thought, let's move on. And I got into one of the big 4 consulting firms. I moved to Chennai. And I hadn't really planned anything. In fact, I was applying for jobs. I had 2 private equity offers 1 year into my consulting role. And one of my batchmates called up saying, he was looking to start out. And we got chatting. And really without any planning, we said, okay, let's do something together. And our earlier plan was to open a chain of supermarkets. That time Subiksha was pretty big. We loved the story of Subiksha. We thought, what Subiksha was doing was great and we could do with some modifications of it in certain other parts of the country. And my partner was with Levers in Gujarat, so we thought, Gujarat is a great market, modern trade is understood well there and so on. So it was a very, very bookish, MBA-ish kind of led thought you can see in my entire journey. The business education in some way has had a lot of impact. So then we got chatting and, I quit my job and we started looking to raise money. And this was the time when every big business house in the country was talking, so we were looking to raise 5 crores to open a couple of shops in Gujarat. And then next day, Tata's would announce, we are investing 20,000 crores in the retail format. Then next day, Birla's would announce 30,000 crores. Then Reliance will say 2 lakh crores and, the stories will end. So we said, look, this and that's the feedback which investors were giving us. And I realize now that was probably the right step. It's not really a startup kind of a business. Being in a retail supermarket is not really a startup kind of a business. If we had been there, I don't know where the journey would have led to. Probably there would have been a different path. Then we started saying, what is it that really excites us? And we jointly decided that what excites us is consumer businesses. My partner came from a Levers background. I was a marketing major. So we said, let's look at a consumer business where the corporates are never going to say, I want to be in this business. So nobody is going to make an announcement, 10,000 crores and 20,000 crores ever. So we started looking at almost everything. So, we looked at toys, we looked at lingerie, we looked at gardening, I love theater. So we said, can we commercialize theater, take it pan-India? And we looked at spas. Then we realized, the more we started talking to customers, getting a little bit of feedback, we realized that spas was an opportunity because there was no branded spa chain pan-India then. Thankfully, there are very few players even now. Spas were very expensive. So, whenever we were traveling, our companies would pay for the 5-star stay, but the spa money we had to pay, which was more than the room rent many a times. So we thought there was an opportunity to create a spa chain which offered affordable services. We started knocking at the doors of investors. We had done that earlier only. Ours was a capex intensive business, so we didn't have any savings ourselves because we had only 2 years of job experience. We didn't want to take money from family. We met a lot of investors. We probably would have met like 100 investors, out of which 1 or 2 we had liked. And it so happens that they were also based in Chennai. We got chatting and they finally agreed to come on board. Now, it was that time only largely a family office. Now it's a proper fund called Fulcrum Ventures. We have had a fantastic journey with them. It's like sometimes you get into an arranged marriage and you discover that that's the best partner you could have had. And the journey with Fulcrum has been so great. They come from a business background themselves, so we have never understood the fancy valuations which we see today. We have never understood the large investments which entrepreneurs raise today. Ours has been like a drip irrigation. We were just discussing, Murali was asking me how much money have you raised. I said, it's been drip irrigation. We take very little money, what is really needed for survival and for the growth for the next for the near future, and that's how it's been. From spas, we started diversifying into a few other related areas. We realized that spas were in the preventive side. So Dr. Velumani was telling us very interesting, how there is a disease and there is a disorder and there is stress, distress. I get a little scared of distress because our name is de-stress. So de-stress and distress can sometimes get confusing. So we were on the stress management part earlier. We said, can we also cure disorders, what he rightly classified as disorders? Ayurveda has fantastic solutions in disorders. So all your lifestyle related disorders like diabetes, cholesterol, triglyceride, arthritis, spondylitis, these are all conditions in which our parents' generation typically happened either after 50 or didn't happen at all. But today is happening in the 20s and 30s. So 2 years back, we started in Ayurveda clinics. We also got into some nutraceutical products which are very complementary to the kind of customers we are catering to. So 30 spas right now, 11 Ayurveda clinics, a bouquet of products. I have 2 partners. My second partner is from IIT Bombay, my batchmate from Ahmedabad, and third partner was his colleague at Levers. I had not even met before I decided to join hands with the third guy. My partner told me, "Acha banda hai, saath mein kaam karenge." I said, "Chalo karte hain." That's the kind of. So a lot of things, were meant to be, is what I will say. But I've enjoyed my journey in the last 10, 11 years. And Murali was asking me, "What's your exit plan?" I said, I don't have an exit plan. Yes, for the investors there needs to be an exit plan. For me, there is no exit plan. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So if I need to be doing this for the rest of my life, I'm pretty happy.
Great. Bhaskar, a story from financial services, NBFCs to where you are today, first generation entrepreneur. That story, if you could just share with us.
Yeah. So probably you heard a very interesting story from Doctor, interesting story from Anurag, and mine is a pretty boring story. So I sincerely believe that boring is not necessarily bad. It's also one kind of style. So I was, and certainly probably in some of the industries being boring is very good. Certainly in the lending business, you don't need to be a hero in terms of doing everything, need to be the fastest and need to be the best. You can take time and you can still build a good, probably a world-class organization. I'm from Chennai. I did my engineering from SRM Engineering College, then did my MBA. I had no idea in terms of what to do, typical middle class or lower middle class Chennaiite. You do engineering and you do some MBA and then you end up in one of the financial services firm. So I got an offer in Citibank in campus. But they said there are 2 categories. One is category 1, which is for IIMs, and category 2 is basically for non-IIMs. I said, no, I don't want to start my career where I'll be, in lack of any other word, work in a racist organization of 2 categories. Maybe that was right, but I didn't want. So I had a senior who was a role model. So he was working in First Leasing. So I said, I want to work in that company. So I joined a company called First Leasing. Till now I worked in 5 organizations. In 2, I learned what not to do. In 3, I learned what to do. It certainly both really helped. As I joined First Leasing, I realized that everything is good. We are lending to the best of companies at a pricing which is lower than the cost at which we are borrowing. So they told me that there is something called depreciation which need not be priced. I said that's true for a factory. As a normal 3-month-old experienced kid, I thought something was wrong in that organization. So I didn't stay for beyond 9 months. So I moved on to another company called Cholamandalam, where speed is not the essence, doing it slowly, steadily. Then that organization also changed color at some point of time. But then from Cholamandalam, it was kind of, I was there and they said, will you go to Mumbai? I said, yes. Only thing, you give me a good accommodation. So they gave me an accommodation in Dadar. It was fabulous. So I enjoyed Mumbai, loved Mumbai. So somehow I wanted to settle down in Mumbai. It was fast, it was quick. While I was working in Cholamandalam, then I got a break in HDFC Bank to do what's called vehicle finance. I have run truck funding business for Chola for some part of time, started the division in HDFC, ran that business full-fledged of what was SRF Finance, which was taken over by GE. But somehow I realized that I actually knew nothing about truck funding while I was running the business. So I said, I want to do something, but all along the experience in any financial service, go to a bank, go to anybody, we trust them, but they don't buy any product for you, they only sell. I hate the word cross-sell. So when I did the business plan for my banking project, as we applied for a small finance bank, I said I will not have a header called cross-sell. But then I did more analysis. It said that the other income of HDFC Bank is equal to PBT for the last 20 years. So still I don't understand, so we are ready to start. All points of time, I loved being little boring. So I have 2 role model companies, not that they are boring. One is HDFC Limited and one is Sundaram Finance. But if you look at both of them, they always created value for their stakeholders, their employees, steady, not really very heroic, But any point of time, probably by quick working, any point of time entered the stock of HDFC Limited or Sundaram Finance and exited after 5 years, probably made a 15% CAGR. And probably that is all that a good investor wants, not a 25% one year, 2% minus next year, and then you are a hero, you are kind of not doing. So I said, what is that we can do to really do something where I am consciously buying products for the customer, not selling them. So will I consume the same product if somebody were to sell me with all the knowledge? Year after year, I'm getting lots of accidents in terms of understanding that is not the case. So all along the life, I thought 5 lakh of insurance cover was good. But when my wife went through a small surgery for 2.4 lakhs, all I got was 40,000 rupees claim. They said, if you take a higher hospital rental, not only the rental, everything is proportionately done. I don't understand the logic. So all of this really helps you in terms of saying the trust is the core in terms of financial services. You get a platform where people trust you, but you work on a model where inherently it says that they ideally should not be trusting you. So with that dream, we applied for what is called as a small finance bank license. We are otherwise a microfinance here, which is give loans, take interest, and then build scale, give more loans. So you're typically becoming a larger and larger money lender. There was only a transactional value, and you are pitching to the investors, you're saying that you're doing all those things. But you know for sure that you're actually not doing anything except for building scale by giving more money, making more profit and more valuation and so on. I don't understand what is dilution, as Dr. Velumani said that no, he didn't want to dilute. I had never believed in dilution. I said I have so many shares into so many rupees, is done. And in a financial service, it is not possible to have 51%, 26% on a clean basis. So I have only limited money, I have to put that money and won't say at no point I own more than 10%. As a startup company, I own 10%, now I own 5%. But I was pretty clear that along the journey, you need to get investors or people who partner with you, who at least are on the same wavelength as you, where you can speak what you want. You may not be the best, but if people understand that if it is what I can do. So my pitch to all the investors have been, this is what I can do, and this is what I cannot do. I cannot be the fastest, I cannot be the best, I cannot do all of that. What I can do is that I can do, probably try setting up a sustainable platform where what the investor knows is what I know. Nothing more, nothing less. But when we started in 2008 when the financial crisis happened. I struggled to raise 2 crores. I met an investor called Vineet Rai who wanted me to join as a CEO because one of my ex-colleagues started a company called Equitas, which is also a small finance bank. So he wanted me to join as a CEO. He said that no, if you want to do on your own, I will underwrite. We didn't have any business model. I wanted to do, but I didn't know what is microfinance. But I said, it doesn't matter. I bet on people. I was actually surprised that you'll have to pitch to the investor, and investor will tell you why this will not work or why you're not capable of running the business. He said, don't worry, just go ahead. I said, Vineet, but it's very difficult. He said, just focus on getting first 10,000 customers. If you do that, you will understand what it takes to get 1 million customers, which is 10 lakhs. I said, okay. As he said that we ran that 10,000. That investor, which is Avishkar, never ever have come to my office till he exited last year. Not even once. That's one kind of investor. Then comes Low Capital, who is little more involved. So over a period of time, I told them, we have 2 extreme investors. Somebody said choosing investors is like marriage. But what do you do when you have multiple partners? It becomes very difficult. So you'll have to, of course, this is more legitimate. Okay. So we had Avishkar, we had Lok, and I had 2 role model companies. HDFC also happened to become my investor. I said, great, so at least step 1 done. Sundaram is yet to become an investor. Probably when we list Sundaram Mutual Fund, we'll buy our shares. So kind of things happened. I think beyond choosing an investor sometimes is a little accidental luck if you get the right investor. But the small takeaway, what I understood all along is that if I'm able to tell them what I can, and equally important, what we cannot and what we will not, you either get investors who like your style, or one of the companies where they like the style. So when the expansion, when the entire industry was growing at 80% last year in March, I was just very uncomfortable. I said, we are not going to grow for the next 9 months. And we are in the midst of fundraise. But surprisingly, I think if you tell them exactly what you're wanting to do, we still got our investors. We got 51% domestic. We applied, and then we are becoming a small finance bank, hopefully by Monday next. So that's my boring story as of now.
As I told you, you're going to find it very interesting, this particular session. And I'm sure you all agree. Just the stories which they just started are so fascinating. Doctor, now the second step, the P. You already did indicate in your beginning that they came and spoke, and you seem to have had actually a luxury of having someone who's coming and saying, I want to invest, and you had the pleasure of valuations, of benchmarking your own valuations. But having said that, what was you were taking money into the company? I'm sure that was that, or was it just buying your secondary shares?
It was secondary shares.
So you never needed money.
Company never needed money. I wanted money.
So even there, did you have any selection process, any thoughts that even if you're selling it, because these people have rights, they get into agreements and all that sort of thing, did you have a certain expectation or profile of who you wanted to sell the shares to? Or was it just the highest bidder?
I don't think there were too many bidders around, because I didn't ask for funds. It's they themselves identified and came to me. And there was no comparison. And I came to know only while signing the SPA, that the SPA runs into 500 pages. Otherwise, earlier I was thinking they will give check and I will give shares. But then that was a great, I have my brother who is a CFO who understood all these things, and he literally took the job of marriage. Having said that, I think investors, my investors are no different from any other investors. All investors come with clear objective, entry with 20% less, exit at 20% more. This is the dream. This we had, because when they came to me, I told 600, they told it is 450. So 20% they were bargaining. When they went out, I said 1800, they said it is 2400. Look, my company, I know what's the value, but then investors have their own way of evaluating it. Having said that, there is a huge gap between the investors and the investees. There are plenty of gems who have wonderful projects. People don't go and search and find out who are worth it and putting the money. They only read Economic Times, where somebody has made an ability to present himself as a business. Next day, all will be there. By the way, you want to know why investors came to me? I gave full-page advertisement to sell my product. Product was not sold. Investors were then the line. Having said that, I think the investors also have studied very closely the way in which they scrutinize, they ask so many questions. I think there are only two words I know. One is security, another is prosperity. All investors want a secured prosperity. So that's where probably they don't risk. They risk minimum. I think I left my government job when people ask me, I want to risk. I think romancing with risk is the wonderful way of creating prosperity. I have a reason to believe, as an entrepreneur, if I could do, as an investor, they have too much of money. We did have enough confrontations in the boardroom a couple of times. I would like to reduce the rate. They will wonder, why are you reducing the rate? Then I will ask, where had I had all of you on the board on the day when I started my company, you would have not allowed me to charge least in the market. So to that extent, they were reluctant. They don't understand the dynamics. The man who's sitting in the helm of affairs to be trusted should be given enough freedom. If he has 65% stock, he loses, you should be taking that risk also. In fact, once in a boardroom, it literally came to know, we will not permit. Then I just got up, I went to his chair, and I told him, please come and sit in this chair. I'm not taken a leave for last 15 years. I want 2 years break. You have put in sufficient money into the company. I trust you. Please run the company. If you can keep the slope of growth as well as profitability, I will give you the excess value as additional shares to you. Then they understood it's not their cup of tea. And they went out for a discussion and came back and agreed with what I say. I think business is always run by the entrepreneur. You need to have a man who is cool, who is focused, who is frugal enough, and you put in your money. The rest, you just leave it to him. They were very happy. They celebrated when they went out 5 years, 4 times. So I believe that was not because of my own capabilities, was lucky to be in healthcare industry. And in healthcare, I want you people to understand, of all the business, healthcare, even stupids don't lose money. I want all you to register this. Healthcare is a business in which no one loses really. And in healthcare, diagnostics is money spinning. And in entire diagnostics, more than radiology, pathology is more money. And in entire pathology, biochemistry is the cashew nut. And I was luckily doing that biochemistry part. So I believe my vehicle was good, my journey was good, and I had a wonderful time. Having said that, I see in my space almost all investors are celebrating. That is an open invitation for all of you to search and find who our small competitors and push them to become big competitors. This industry is so big, 10 such billion-dollar value companies can coexist because India is a land of numbers, and healthcare in India today is very small because mean age of Indians is only 28 years. Healthcare is an actual industry when mean age reaches 40 years, 45 years. Next 40 years, this industry will grow 20 to 30% year over year. This is my feeling, and I had a wonderful time. Let me allow my colleagues to.
Yeah, just before you raised one particular point, stress in the boardroom. This is one of the fears many entrepreneurs have about private equity. We have seen cases where, as we were discussing also, private equity investors, the honeymoon period is there, they love you and all that sort of thing. But when they think things are going wrong or what it is not up to this thing, sometimes we have seen in some very largely invested private equity firms where there is the founders are even removed from the operations and they take over. But the context I'm saying, sir, is the fact that you yourself, in such a successfully growing company, you had stresses with the investors. How would you advise entrepreneurs? So I presume this stress can be there in other boards also. How would you advise an entrepreneur who has a private equity investor if when the situation becomes tough, and especially in the context of an agreement where a minority shareholder has so much of powers, which has got nothing to do with their shareholding, how to handle it?
I think when it comes to life, not only business, you can either discuss or you can decide. You can't do both. I said all my decisions I took without discussing. So in the boardroom, I accept discussions only to listen. Whatever they take, yes, it's a very good idea, I must implement. When they come next board meeting, they may not remember what they said. Why to unnecessarily confront with them? Only problem is when I say, they confront. And then a couple of times I felt I must stick to what I am. And I think it's a conviction and it's an ability to tell them or convince them that this is the right way to go ahead. Boardrooms will become a very big fight only when the promoter lacks a conviction, a good project, a good strategy. More than anything else, जो कोना चाहता है वो कभी खोता नहीं है, जो कोने से डरता है वो कभी पाता नहीं है. I believe promoters should have an ability or a plan to lose. And the investor will see that you are planning to lose and he will have a fear. I think the ones who did not plan to lose, lose. And the one who made an attempt to lose will not lose. I will give you a small, simple example. We were charging $2 for thyroid testing. One fine day, my daughter asked me, "Are you not rich?" I said, "I am very rich." "What are you going to do with the money?" I told I will give it back to the society. So my daughter asked me a question, "Are you not looting from the patient and giving to the society? Is that a fair idea to do?" I was quite disturbed because what she asked for an age of 23 was profound. I took a decision to reduce my price from $2 thyroid testing to $1 overnight. 10 crore, pat, gone. That is what we discussed in the boardroom where they objected. But I told them, look, trust me, if I reduce the rate, the profits will go up. They were finding it difficult because every investor do not know what is your space, what is its dynamics and how is unorganized, how volumes can grow. My IPO story is only because I reduced the price from $2 to $1. My growth was around 17-18%, which went to 27%. My profitability has not changed. My total profits have gone up. It's impossible to believe that by reducing the price, you can increase the profits. But then I knew and I took the risk, and probably my investors today celebrate. Afterwards, during IPO days, I told him, look, you didn't agree for that. Doc, you are visionary.
Anurag, your journey has been different in the sense you have bought external investors at almost the beginning, I could say, almost at the beginning. If you could, and many entrepreneurs who are going to start, who are already there or who are planning to start, they will require, most of them come from middle class families or they come from backgrounds where they will require external capital. What would you advise them on how to manage this relationship? Because as you were mentioning also, sometimes the business school education is actually, it is a boundary or a limiter, a delimiter, because we are told 5-year plans, 3-year plans, and as all of you were mentioning, actually month after month sometimes strategy has to be changed, plans have to be this thing. And it can be very confusing to an external partner. How this issue has to be handled, how that trust should remain, and how you can make it happen. Because it's always difficult when in our personal lives, if you meet a person who says one thing today, 1 month later, exactly it's something different, you start wondering, you start distrusting that person. You don't have conviction about that person. So the same logic actually applies here. But the business reality is you have to keep changing. How do you handle this dichotomous situation?
So one is like Murali, we were discussing that this 5-year plan, at least I would like to believe, never works. 5 years is just about the time when you start getting a feel of the business, and it changes after 10-15 years also. So what we started off 10 years back has absolutely nothing to do with what we are doing today. And I don't know if what we are doing today will be the same as what we will be doing 5 years or 10 years from now. So if an entrepreneur has choice between investors, I would at least personally always go for the investor where I have maximum person comfort rather than valuation, even if the valuation is very different between two investors. I think the personal comfort, he was mentioning as wavelength should match, or whatever way you define. It's like the way you feel that I can work with this person, or sometimes you feel that I'm getting into this relationship because out of a compulsion. Sometimes you may not have an option. If you have an option, go with the person who you think you can work with, who you think you can bounce off ideas with. Also, there is a responsibility as entrepreneurs if you're taking external money. One thing which Fulcrum told us 10 years back, still continues to be one guiding principle. They told us, good news, if you don't tell us, we don't mind. Bad news, even 12 in the night, please call. And they're very, very, they come from Chennai, Tamilian Brahmins, they're very, very particular about certain things. Statutory 1 rupee default, they're extremely worried. They would say anything which is going wrong in the business, please drop a message, email, phone call, whatever, let us know, no problem. And they come from a business background, so I think we have had the fortune of not having too many confrontational situations. In fact, there have been times where they could see through a mistake and tell us, this is a mistake. If you still want to go and do this. But the moment you realize this is a mistake, change it fast. Not all investors may be like that, but I think the personal rapport which you build in the first few meetings, it's extremely critical that dating period is there between an investor and an entrepreneur. I think investors also like to have that dating period. Now nobody is writing a check, in 1 or 2 meetings. People want to spend time, see the working styles. I think if the investor is betting on the entrepreneur, chances of working together amicably are higher. If they are betting only on the idea, and I've seen some investors do that. I want to invest in real estate, this kind of a company, and then I scout for the company. There, the chances of a mishap may be higher, versus if the investor is betting on the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur has comfort in the investor as a person. I think the chances of a mishap are lower, or the misunderstandings will get cleared faster.
So quickly to summarize that, Anurag, can we just say it will be better to have an investor, not necessarily the super sophisticated suave who knows what's happening in the world and all that, but somebody who has dirtied their hands in running a business so that they are comfortable with the ambiguity of running a business. Do you think so?
If I have the choice, I would always go for an investor who has run some business, even for whatever small period of time.
I want to add some humor to it.
Sure, sir, please.
If a lady is asked, you want an intelligent daughter-in-law or a Buddhu? What a lady will tell, daughter-in-law. So Buddhu means you can run your own way. Intelligent means she will bring in something of her own. So I think as an investee also, sometimes people want somebody just to give money. Then sometimes some people want a board room strength, strategy strength. So I think both are available in the marketplace. It's all up to you to choose. I think this is my interpretation of it.
Bhaskar, in your story as it came out, you marched to your own song, and you didn't seem to get influenced by what was happening in the prevalent market, and especially the selection of your role models was very interesting. HDFC and Microfinance, two extremely established brands who have been around for 30, 40 years and who have never got carried away by what is prevailing in the market. They seem to have very clear rules. And that seemed to have also reflected in the fact, as you were saying, that you even went to the extent of telling your investors, I'm not going to grow the way that your particular industry was growing at such exponential, not year-wise, month-wise they were growing. And you took the thing of saying, I'm actually not be able to grow like this. And still you were able to get investors. What do you think? I mean, because this is actually very, very contrarian. Whatever you hear, some standard statements from investors, they want fast growth, big markets, super movement must be fast and all that. How were you able to zero on to such investors who were able to relate to what you were saying, that you were taking something which is happening very contrary to what is happening in your own industry?
I don't think I have the answer for many of that, except that sometimes you'll have to, as an entrepreneur, you'll have to do what you're comfortable with rather than what somebody else is comfortable with. If I'm only 5 feet 5 inches tall and I want to act like Dr. Velumani, I'm going to be setting up for failure to myself and to themselves. I think that communication becomes very important. I think what I probably, as we are sitting here thinking through, is that probably a first investor becomes a brand ambassador for investor 2.
Absolutely.
And investor 2 becomes a brand ambassador for 1 and 2 become for 3. So probably Avishkar, which is the first investor, was an investor in every other round which we are doing at all the valuations. So did Low Capital, so did HDFC, so did IFC. So I think they themselves kind of give a good comfort to the investors. Okay, let people do what they want, as Anurag was also mentioning. I think sometimes they need to tell us what we should listen to, and we decide what we want to do. They should not necessarily be telling us what we want to listen, even if you're successful. I think they can tell us that this is what we feel, and then it's up to us to do it. I think some of us as startups are like teenagers. We need to be told, but not to be pushed. Tell us and let us do what we think is comfortable. Sometimes they go with I think the biggest problem which some of the investors have seen is that they're so obsessed with Excel model working. I said,
Exactly.
what do you want? You want valuation to be justified? Now increase it by 0.25.
Over.
It all goes up. Oh, your profitability is down, ROE is 13. So I increase my pricing, reduce my cost. That's on Excel. Thanks to Bill Gates. Other than that, I think valuation is something we'll have to kind of take it in a stride and use the word IC every time. Our IC will have to answer. I think if you are talking to a so-called promoter or entrepreneur, I think you should also be able to convince your IC. You should not be convincing us because your IC will not listen to this. And ultimately, I was thinking that only the people who are talking to us are part of the IC. No, the IC consists of X, Y, Z, and then we'll have to explain. I think if you push people to do it, then I think you become uncomfortable. Then you start doing what they want. So in our case, I was not capable of delivering that. So it was better to be upfront because I needed to sleep 7 hours a day. So else, you are kind of living for somebody else, and it doesn't work for them, work for you. And probably I think it has to do with the industries as well. In our industry, it is possible. In lending business, it's not always the fastest to win. It is probably the best guy with the shoulders, head on the shoulders and feet on the ground, who win over a period of time. So both of these companies, either HDFC or Sundaram or any other financial institution, they are successful only when they are successful for decades together. I think when somebody says that, no, you have done this, you have been successful, I say, no, too early to measure success in any business, certainly in a financial institutions business, in 10 years and 15 years. You will have to have bandwidth to judge for 30 years and 50 years. So when Tamal wanted to write a book on HDFC Bank, apparently Deepak Parekh told him that it's too early to write a book on HDFC Bank. It is only 25 years old, irrespective of the fact that it's so successful and so on. I think you have to be comfortable in terms of telling the story, and if you're not comfortable, better not tell the story.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been told that I am sure you'll agree, even if this thing goes past 6, you'll be ready to listen to these stories. but I've been told that we are out of time and we have to close this session. So I would just like to summarize, I think, key takeaways, which is an advice to entrepreneurs who are going to be looking at external capital, and even entrepreneurs who are not looking at capital, but what are some sort of broad rules one can internalize, or principles one can internalize. One is have conviction about what you are doing. So it has to be so strong that when you meet others, especially the investors, and they tell you their story of how you should run your business, you should give them the option of trying to convince them. If they are not convinced, walk away, even whatever be the valuation. Second is, following from first, don't chase valuations. Relationships are always difficult, and they're always, you never know how it is going to progress. But at least from a mindset aspect, don't let valuation not drive you. Let us try to get a sense of the investor as a human being, how they think of a business, how they think of a relationship. And the third one, of course, do have a long-term focus. As I think Dr. Velumani mentioned it very humorously outside, he says everybody wants to be a Mark Zuckerberg, which is absolutely actually true. He's success has to be quick. But all three, I think you have heard in their different stories, different lives, each one of them is emphasizing the long-term aspect of it. That is, long-term is the way. It is a patient game. It is a difficult road to be traveled, and you have to keep that in mind. With that, I thank every one of you. It has been such a wonderful thing to hear each of your stories, and it has been a real pleasure. And as you see from the response of the audience, every one of them really enjoyed whatever you said. Thank you.
Thank you very much.